Hi everybody, today I'm working on a 2012 Mini Cooper S Roadster. Today I'll be installing a forged front-mounted intercooler. These are widely considered to be the best intercoolers in the business. I believe they were the pioneers of this staggered design where you've got double cores on the bottom half for better fitment behind the bumper. They also have forged end tanks like the name implies. They're considered to be one of the intercooler designs with the best fitment for the Generation 2 Mini Coopers. We're also going to be installing one of these intake muffler deletes. This one's from Way Motorworks, and it's a nice solid design with flanges on the ends to avoid the hoses from popping off, because this is under boost. These are a great mod as well. They help the throttle to be more responsive. To install the intercooler, we'll need to remove the front bumper, and on the post facelift cars with the N18 engine, we're probably also going to need to remove the front crash support. So we'll get the bonnet opened up. Ooh, dirty. A couple nice tools to have for this job are body clip removers. Otherwise you are probably going to destroy the clips trying to remove them. I'll put a link in the description where you can find this and any other special tools I use for this job. As I mentioned, I'm working on a post facelift car, but it's pretty similar for the earlier cars built 2010 and earlier. The only difference is going to be crash support, which I'll show later, and the addition of these brake ducts. So the first thing we'll do is uninstall the headlights. This outboard screw on the earlier cars can get corroded and have trouble removing it. So it's a good idea to put some penetrating oil on this and wait overnight. Once we've got the bolts removed, we'll disconnect the electrical connection, and on cars with headlight washers, we'll pinch and remove the headlight washer connection. You just pinch the top and the bottom to disconnect this, and same thing for the washer. Next, I'll use my body clip tool to remove the fasteners that hold on the washer bottle and the upper grill. I'm also going to use this tool to remove the connector for the bonnet latch. I'll just slide underneath and pop it up, and then I'll separate the little door here, and then inside is the Bowden cable. Then I'll close the door again. Then I'm going to pop up this little grommet here because we're going to push this through in a few minutes. There's a couple more 10mm bolts, one on each side for holding it onto the radiator core, and then one longer bolt in the back here for holding on the charge tube. Next is 4 Torx 30 bolts for the bonnet latch. Next I'll remove the upper grill, and there's a couple of plastic little clips here. You kind of push on them to get them to release. Once you've done that, you can pull the grill forward, and there's a couple more on the center part here. I'll do the same thing. I'll kind of push on them to get it to release. At this point, it's probably easier to get my hand in there. And then you can pull the grill forward. This exposes a couple of Torx T25 fasteners, one on each side. And while I have the T25 tool, I'll go underneath. There's a couple more Torx T25 on the outer corners. Next, I'll grab a 13mm socket to remove these 2 rear 13mm bolts. And that allows us to remove the upper crash support. I'll push the bonnet cable through the hole here. Next, I'll remove the front wheels to make it easier to get access to the bumper clips. So in here, there's about 4 or 5 screws we're going to need to loosen. And I'm also going to remove this cover here. You just kind of twist. If it's tough to remove, I'll take a pair of pliers and twist it that way. Then we can unscrew these screw clips. If you find the whole clip is spinning while you're turning it, just pull on the wheel liner, that'll stop it from turning. And on cars with brake ducts, there's another one right here. And that should allow us to peel back the wheel liner. I'm going to shove a block of wood in here to hold it up out of the way. And there's a couple more clips. You can see one here, another one up here. And for these clips, it really helps to have this tool. You can kind of get in there and squeeze, kind of rotate and pull, and it'll come out. Sometimes the clip is in there pretty good, and it's hard to get purchase on the little flat spots. So you might have to kind of just pry and wedge a little bit and deform it slightly. And then you can get it to come out. Or you could just destroy the things and buy replacements. I'll put a link in the description where you can get replacement clips. When I put the car back together, I like to put the clips not in the whole way, so next time around it's easier to take it out. The wheel arch doesn't need to come off completely, but it is connected to the front bumper by a couple of, I don't know what these are called, little groove thingies. So you need to push the bumper forward to get them to disconnect. And the easiest way to do it is to hold onto the bumper with one hand and then push with the palm of your hand with the other hand in the forward direction. Just like this. And the reason we need to do this is there's another screw behind here which we need to remove to take the bumper cover off. If I pull on it, I don't have enough room to get my tool in, but hiding behind here on the fender there's a couple of clips, and if I pinch these I can get them to pop out. This one is broken, but I'll take my bent nose pliers and kind of slide them up and then pinch them at the same time as I pull, and then that gives me more room. And then I'll shove a towel up in here to keep it from reconnecting itself, which they like to do. And now we have plenty of room to get to that screw. And we'll repeat on the other side. And on the right side of the car, there's a little skid plate under here to protect the belt. We'll have to remove that as well. Although in this car we have a GP2 skid plate, so we'll have to remove the entire thing. So it's just held on by a bunch of screws. And yes, you can buy these for any Cooper S. I think they'll fit anything that's a Gen 2. So we'll get the skid plate out of the way. And now we can see the old intercooler from the back side of the bumper here. So you've got the intake pipe on this side and the charge pipe on this side. The one minor modification we probably need to make is to cut this plastic support back a little bit, because it gets really close to the pipe and it's hard to get the worm clamp on there. While we're under here, we'll use my body clip tool to remove 3 remaining body clips. If you have an aero bumper, there's probably an additional couple of clips on the front here, and they use a Phillips type of plastic fastener. And then the last step before we remove the bumper is to remove these brake ducts, and you just kind of pull backward and kind of twist, and they pop free. So now we should be able to pull the bumper cover forward. Headlight washer cars will have a washer tube along the front here. There's also going to be a temperature sensor down here. And then this car has the halo fog lights, but on all cars there'll be a connector for the front fogs and turn signals. So you just disconnect those. Okay, so now we can see where the intercooler lives, and the old one comes out pretty easily over the top of this tube, but the forged intercooler is not going to fit so easily. So there's actually a couple of 13 mil screws on the back side here. We're going to have to remove those, and also these 13s on the top here, and remove this front part of the crash bumper. If your car is pre-facelift, you might be able to get away with just sliding the intercooler up and behind it. So there's 3 bolts on each side for the top part. There's going to be a small Torx T20 fastener on the top here as well. And there's 2 more Torx 20 on the bottom as well. And then on the bottom, on the back side, there's going to be 2 13 mil bolts. I think it's a Torx 30 on the inside as well. It's like a dual head bolt. The bolt heads are very shallow for some reason, so you want to make sure that you don't round them off. And that side's off now. We'll repeat on the other side. The final bolt is here, tucked behind the washer bottle. I think I can get to it with an extension. Once you have all those bolts removed, this front crash bumper will come right off. So now we can see the intercooler completely. Alright, so just a couple more fasteners to get this intercooler off. There's a couple of Torx 25 in the front, and then we got the hose clamps. So we'll go underneath and loosen these clamps, and it's nice they got a little hole under here so you can get your tool up in there. Just loosen this most of the way, and we'll do the same on the other side. And then I'll pry the hose off. I'll use my screwdriver, and it's kind of glued on there pretty good. The plastic and the rubber are kind of stuck to each other. Then I'll go back to the front side and I'll take my screwdriver and kind of wedge it in between the intercooler and the hose. So I'm just going to kind of get under there and flex it until it breaks free. And I'll repeat on the other side. This one looks like it's coming off much easier. Now I can pop it out of there totally. There we go. Like I said, we're also removing the intake muffler delete, so I'm going to basically remove this hose completely. So the next thing I'm going to do is loosen the upper hose clamp. And this one's stuck onto the turbo even better than onto the intercooler. So I'm going to take a smaller screwdriver that I can get into the gaps more easily. And just kind of work it off of the hose. And just kind of work through. I'm also going to move this coolant reservoir out of the way. There we go. So now we can see the intake muffler down here, and it's actually held onto the core support by a single 25 Torx. Here's the muffler tube from underneath, and the screw is behind this radiator hose. So I'm going to pop this hose out of the little bracket. And you can see this, and now we can see the screw up there. It's that silver screw. And I'll get on there with a 1/4 inch extension. And we won't be putting that bolt back in. So now I'll pull this thing up and out of here. And I'm going to draw a little mark on the hoses so we know what orientation they are in relation to each other, because they're turned at like a 90-degree angle to each other. Then we'll go ahead and loosen these hose clamps. These are 7 mil. And we'll do the same thing to get the hoses off of the tube. I'm going to spray some lubricant in there again to help it to come off. There we go. Now this part's easy compared to that. So I'll line up my marks at 90 degrees to each other. And we'll tighten up these hose clamps again. These are under boost, so be sure they're tight, but not too tight. And we'll slip this back in, and I'm going to spray some lubricant on it. And put it back onto the turbo. Next, I'm going to modify this bracket support here. I'm just going to cut it back a little bit, about that much. And I've got this handheld Sawzall, which works really well. It uses standard Sawzall blades, but it's handheld. You just kind of take them out and you can replace them anytime you want. I'll make 2 relief cuts. This side's usually okay, but I'm still going to cut it back just a little bit, just to be on the safe side. I'll lubricate the hose ends so that they go on easily. It comes with a couple of bushings that fit over these dowels. And then we hold the intercooler up. Then we'll put the new intercooler in place. And we reuse the existing screws for this. I'm not tightening them up all the way yet. I'm just dry fitting for now. On the bottom here, there's a little notch in the plastic, and the intercooler tanks fit on each side of that notch. And once you've got that lined up, you can tighten down these bolts. Now that we have the intercooler back in place, we can put the crash bumper back on. I'll just hold it in place now with a couple of the 13 mil nuts. On the radiator core, there's a plastic centering dowel on each side, so we'll need to line that up before we can screw everything down. So I'm just going to lift up by hand, and it should slide back in place. I'll repeat on the other side. Next, we'll put these small 13 mil bolts in, and we'll do this before the top bolts because we have to lift slightly to get the holes to line up. So I'll thread them in on both sides. And then I'll tighten up all the 13 mil screws. And don't forget the little 20 mil screws. So as you can see, it fits nicely behind the lower crash bar. Not all of the aftermarket intercoolers fit this nicely. There's a little aluminum bracket here, which for some cars you can use this to center the intercooler with the top of the crash tube. On other cars it doesn't fit. Check the instructions that comes with the kit for how to use this. On this car the clip doesn't work, so I'm going to take a couple of zip ties and use that to secure the top part. I'll put the zip tie through the hole, and I'm using 2 zip ties because it's too short. Make it nice and snug, and then clip off the ends. So this keeps it from moving. Now we can go back underneath. And the first thing I'm going to do is reconnect the little clip holding the radiator hose in place. The one that we removed for the intake muffler. Snaps in place. And then we can put the intercooler hoses back on. That's one side. And we'll tighten the screws. These should be pretty tight so you don't get a boost leak. Alright, so that's pretty much all there is to it. The car is still torn apart obviously, but the rest is pretty simple. It's just reassemble in reverse order, so I won't bore you with that. Thanks for watching and bye-bye.